We do have standing by political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So this is an interesting one to me because we cover the Israel-Hamas war so often, but now that we're hearing about Bibi coming here, possibly giving a address to a joint session, what are the implications for that on the Israel-Hamas war?
It says that the United States, at least the House of Representatives, with Speaker Johnson, are sending the signal that the United States is standing by its ally. That invitation to Bibi Netanyahu is significant. It'll be interesting to see whether a majority speaker in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, where he goes with this. But I suspect they'll be able to put together a joint session of some stripe. And of course, a joint session of Congress is really, really important. And by way of history, by the way, Austin, if Netanyahu speaks to a joint session of Congress, he'll have done it for the fourth time in history. Viewers probably would be interested in knowing no other foreign leader has ever spoken before joint sessions of Congress 4 times. Netanyahu has done it 3 times, as did Winston Churchill. And a little additional trivia, just for maybe our viewers in Hawaii, is the first foreign leader to address a joint session of Congress was none other than King Kalakaua in Hawaii. Wow. And that happened in 1874, the first foreign leader. And of course, that was 85 years before Hawaii even became a state. So the joint session of Congress is very, very important to the international community, because when Netanyahu speaks before the Congress of the United States, he's speaking to the entire world.
Let's put a fine point on what exactly does a joint session of Congress mean. You and I follow these things closely. We hear about joint sessions of Congress often, but what exactly does it mean for Bibi to be speaking in front of a joint session of Congress? That means he will be in person?
He will be in person. He will be speaking before the senators of the United States and the members of the House of Representatives of the United States. Hence the joint session. The 2 bodies are brought into one chamber, the House chamber, and a person comes forward like Netanyahu or somebody else and gives an address. And typically, these people who come before a joint session are actually boycotted by some number of senators and members of the House, at least in the past, because some members don't agree with their policies or whatever. And so it's quite a show, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you alluded to it earlier that there was some potential friction with Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer. What has been some of the pushback from the Democratic side about this speech that is to take place?
Well, it's really not the speech as much as it is where we stand in terms of our support of the Israeli war against Hamas. And Schumer, and frankly the President Biden, have suggested that the Israelis have gone too far, have not considered the plight of the women and children and innocent men of Gaza to the extent that they should have. And so there's been pushback. And of course, Schumer has called for Bibi Netanyahu to be removed from office in favor of another leader in Israel. So it would be very interesting to see Schumer in the audience of a joint session.
So why do we believe Netanyahu is doing this? There's always some sort of political calculus behind a lot of these bigger decisions like this. I've seen Bibi making the rounds on U.S. media within the past week. Does it seem the Israelis have a message that they want to get out?
Absolutely. I think he comes to the United States with a couple of very strong attributes. First of all, his English is excellent. And he knows the American society and knows Americans and has for decades. And so he is the perfect public speaker, as it were, from Israel. And it's at a time when the Israeli-Gazan war is pretty critical. The incursion into Rafah has still not occurred and may, but I think Netanyahu is essentially coming into the joint session of Congress and, in a sense, Austin, speaking around the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives straight to the American people. And you don't get a bigger audience than when you have a joint session of Congress, and you're doing it at a time when Americans will sit down and actually watch the speech.
Regular viewers of Live Now know that we cover this war so closely, and some of the big news to come out about Israel in recent days has been the arrest warrant that was put out against Bibi Netanyahu, as well as Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas within Gaza. Do you think that the timing of this coinciding with some of that drama, do you think that that's a coincidence?
No, nothing's a coincidence. I think you and I have learned in politics. But I think it's an opportunity for him to say, hey, I will travel. I will go where I need to go. Now, of course, the United States and numerous other countries in the world do not subscribe to the tenets of the ICC, the International Court. And so an arrest warrant or anything else is not applicable in the United States, although other countries that are in the region, Canada and some of our Western allies, actually have signed on to the ICC. But having said all that, the ICC really is powerless in many respects. And this is another way of Netanyahu saying, hey, I will prosecute this war. I will speak with our best ally, our greatest ally, and I'll do it in Washington, D.C., so that the American public understands I'm willing to go any distance to press our case.
We don't know when the speech is going to take place yet, but what are you most going to be looking to hear from that speech?
Well, again, Netanyahu is a wonderful speaker. There's no question about that. And I think he will come in and I think he will tell the Israeli story. He'll remind people of the massacre. He will remind people that this has been an ongoing situation in the Middle East for decades, since 1948, since the creation of Israel as a state. And at a certain point, Israel has come to the decision that they cannot continue to do this tit-for-tat type thing. Eventually, they have to go after the terrorists. And so, Austin, they're obviously doing that with Hamas. But there's also a kind of a quiet war going on in the northern border with Hezbollah, with the Houthis, with other groups aligned with Iran. And so this is a very tenuous time in the Middle East. And I think he wants to come in and remind people what's at stake. And that's what he'll do.
And of course, money is always a question that comes to mind when you hear about news events of this nature. We heard that Biden was perhaps going to be withholding certain weapons in light of a potential Rafah incursion. Not all weapons. The U.S. still gives, pretty much on retainer, certain amounts of weapons, but not those high-capacity ones that the Biden administration has deemed, I guess what they would deem the type of weapons that would be used to make some sort of larger incursion into the southernmost city. So do we anticipate that part of why this is all happening is perhaps that they want to get those weapons back, those ones that Biden said, we may take those away depending on how Rafah looks?
I think that's one of the items on the agenda, but we need to remember that Israel, as a standalone state, is the most powerful military in the Middle East, bar none. And they have the weapons they need to prosecute the war in Gaza. Would they like some of these other weapons? Sure. But the underlying message is, hey, you can trust us. We're doing this the right way. We are taking care of a problem that if we don't take care of, and this theme will emerge in the speech, if we don't take care of it in the Middle East, you will be dealing with it in the United States. And so we are actually, in a sense, doing the United States, I hate to use the word favor, but we're doing you a favor in terms of blunting Iran and their proxies in the Middle East. And I think that's going to be part of the message.
So we'll be watching this speech closely. Of course, we still don't know exactly when it would take place. Is there any sort of historical precedence as to when these types of things happen? Could it be any time?
It can be any time. And we'll wait for Speaker Johnson on the House side to send the invitation, and the Israelis have to respond to the invitation. This is all very formal stuff that goes on every time. And then a date is set, and in the meantime, Speaker Johnson's office will be communicating with Chuck Schumer's office on the Senate side to find a date that works for everybody. And as I said earlier, it'll be interesting to see how Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, the majority leader in the Senate, deals with this particular letter that'll come over from Speaker Johnson.
Right. All right. Well, we will leave it there for now, Brian. As always, we look forward to catching up with you more about this as the story progresses. Take care and have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you. And may I say to the viewers and to you, we think about important things on Memorial Day, about the ultimate sacrifice. And so with that, I say good evening to you and good evening to your viewers.
All right. Thank you, sir. Take care.